Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episodes, and I'm sure our audience is very excited because we have a debate next week, and we have our world famous debaters and speakers. They will attend in the debating show debate, and I'm very much happy. Professor David Smith, Professor Donalds, Professor Edward, all of them joining in the debating activities. And already I told you that International Islamic University, one of the largest educational hub in Malaysia, they are also joining with us for these debating activities. AGI Lab offering a debate, AI versus human debate. And beside that, we are also planning, if our audience actually support us, we are planning for corporate debate. We have our big corporate guy, Professor David Smith, Edward, and Professor Donalds. Maybe they can offer their corporate team for these debate tournaments. But today we have different topics. We are very excited about this topic. We will discuss about rapid virus testing, very important. We will create some awareness. I want to give chance to Professor Edward, how you want to analyze this rapid virus testing.
Well, it's interesting. First, let's help your audience with the distinctions between the different kinds of testing for the coronavirus. There's the rapid test, which is called an antigen test, and then there's the molecular test, which is the one that takes a day or 3 days to analyze. The rapid test is not actually testing for COVID. As such, it's testing for the reaction of your body and your defensive system to COVID. So it's almost like, well, we see that there's an army coming out to defend you, so you must have COVID. So it's not actually measuring for COVID, but for the body's reaction to the COVID. But the problem with that test is that if the body isn't reacting quite yet, you could have COVID, but that test will not pick it up. So it tends to be a very good short-term test. You can get results in 1 hour to say, oops, it looks like you have COVID because your defenses are coming out and trying to fight the thing. However, it might be that your defenses aren't out yet, but you do have COVID. So that's the problem with that test. It's very good in the sense that if you want to find very quickly if somebody has it, then that's good. The other test, so-called molecular test, is a test that takes 1 to 3 days usually to analyze. That's what they tell you, at least if you take the test. And it really is looking more at whether you have COVID, and it can test that, well, maybe it's in your system, but the symptoms aren't there yet, and that sort of thing. And by the way, just a little bit of personal information. One of my daughters has had 2 rapid tests and had 2 of the molecular tests. Fortunately, all of them turned out to be negative. I've had one of the molecular tests and fortunately has turned out negative as well. So in terms of the use of the tests, the rapid test is good in the sense that if you suspect that maybe you're a group in your school or wherever your business or whatever it is, you want to see very quickly whether somebody has COVID, then you can use this test. But you should always follow up. If there's a real critical issue, you should follow up with the longer test, because that's going to really tell you whether it's in your system, even if it's not expressed yet. I want to make 2 other very quick points here, because in all of our countries, we're still struggling with COVID, with the different variations of COVID and that sort of thing. And there are 2 issues that unfortunately have come up. One issue is about the science. We have a lot of, when science is politicized, then people frankly don't trust it. And so we have a real problem in this country. I don't want to politicize it. I want to know about what are the risks of COVID? What are the risks of the different variations? What are the risks of the different vaccines? For example, it just came out a day or 2 ago that in the United States here, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, determined that the J&J, Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which many people have taken in this country, does in fact have a higher possibility of blood clots. The reason the AstraZeneca vaccine, which was used extensively in Europe, was never approved in the United States, was because of a concern about blood clots. Now I would say, of course, well, if the concern is, well, a very, very small number of blood clots versus you're going to die from COVID, I'll go with the risk. But the problem is, this is a sort of sophisticated discussion we're having here. And all of Sharif's discussions are sophisticated. That's one of the reasons we love them. But the problem is, in the public minds, because there's a lot of politicization, we don't know what to trust. If, for example, the government says it's safe to take shots, but we know that in fact there's a small percentage of getting blood clots, and we have seen people have very bad reactions, get hospitalized from all of the vaccines, then that's something you have to acknowledge. And you have to basically say, what we have to judge the risks, against the risks of not taking it. And you have to ask about, well, if you take it and you can still get COVID, but it's going to be a mild case and there's a high possibility of that, you have to take all those things into account. I know a lot of people who have had COVID and have had very mild symptoms or none. My father last year was recovering from blood clots in his lungs, and he got COVID. And we thought, oh my gosh, my poor 89-year-old dad, it's the end. Unfortunately, he didn't have any symptoms from COVID. He had symptoms from everything else. So the point I'm making here is kind of getting off of the rapid test. The rapid test basically is good to immediately tell whether someone has it, but you probably should follow up if it's a negative. But we have to look at it in the context of having a public that's informed about these issues and is able to balance off the different risks. So that's kind of my thinking about this.
Thank you, Professor Edward. Now I want to give chance Professor David Smith.
Edward always does a great job on introducing elements here. Where I'd like to go is a little bit different in that there are those type of tests with the two different primary ones. But one of the big trends I see that's happening right now is that we're beginning to see increased segmentation in the testing market. I have diagnostic tests. I have tests which are used inside hospital and critical care, acute care facilities. We have rapid tests that can be used at a number of testing facilities of the different types. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing places where there's an emphasis for at-home test. There is an emphasis for test in the workplace. I can tell you this morning that for the people who do not have the vaccinations and the booster at my girlfriend's workplace, they have to test twice a week. And she was informed today that one of the workers there tested negative yesterday. Well, I tested positive for COVID there. So you see all these different types of tests, and each ones have different modality. The tests that we have in a workforce, to me, might be different than the tests before I get on an airplane to travel internationally. The test that I might do if I go to my local pharmacy, is that the same test as the other ones? If I go into an urgent care clinic, is that the same test? And I think you're going to see those. Globally today, there's over 25 different companies manufacturing rapid testing. And if I go and look in the pending trials in COVID testing and COVID rapid testing, there's over 35 more companies who are taking their innovation and trying to put them through the process. So let me just use a VC type of role and look at it. So within 6 months, we probably will have over 50 different companies manufacturing different type of rapid tests. And the ones that I can see in testing are only in the United States. Now let me go and look at what's in testing in Russia. Let me look in testing what's in Israel. Let me look in testing what's in the Pacific Rim and others. Boy, that number probably is going to be over 100. But what that also tells me, though, is as I began to look at that area and began to look at some of the numbers, it's just going to grow and grow and grow. During 2020 and so far in 2021, the analysts say that the rapid testing market today is about a $90 million marketplace, and that they see it growing significantly going through it. During 2020, the growth was about 6.3% from the very beginning, and it's going up to much further. The other thing, though, is as you begin to look at the geographic coverage, and the geographic coverage is to me is very interesting because rapid tests are not really very popular in developing nations. It's really where you see mobility is very high, is where you see more and more rapid tests. If I look where mobility is not high, you're taking more the 2-day, 3-day test as opposed to the rapid test. The blood tests, some of the others are more common where you do not need that mobility. And I think we're going to see a leveling of the playing field some with these types in the different ones. The challenge as you begin to look at the at-home test is many folks at home do not have the how's the right way to put it, determination to do, for example, the swabbing correctly if I'm using the test where you have to do the nose swab on different sides and do the places. And you're going to see that. And particularly as you see some of the comments coming in with the different types of things there, particularly with people who have the asymmetric type of approach. That does not lead you necessarily to rapid testing. And you're going to have to really work with them there. There's also a question on the efficacy of them when it comes to detecting the things. I hate to put it this way, but the jury's still out. We do not have enough testing data to really go and be able to judge the absolute effectiveness of people with symptoms, without symptoms, and false positives. If you look at the clinical data that is coming out with all the different testing mechanisms, there's still a fairly significant number of false positives. If I was beginning to put this in a non-pandemic time, many of these test kits would not be on the marketplace with the number of false positives they have. So again, it's an area that's constantly changing with that many companies putting not just the same two styles of rapid tests is out there today, but of these other ones which are in trials, there's a number of different ways they are looking at doing some. One of the more promising ones I've seen is actually some of the genetic tests. And there's about a dozen companies that are developing genetic rapid tests. If I'm a betting man, I like that one for beginning to really understand it more. But it's a changing field. And the most we need to do is make sure we stay up to date on it and understand that when we do rapid tests, there is almost a 40% probability today that we're going to have a false negative or false positive. So, Sharif, that's my 2 cents worth.
Now I request Professor Donald. Can you unmute, please?
I want to add to what Professor Edward said, which is that just to clarify a little bit, the antigen tests test for antibodies. And the reason that you can get both false positives and false negatives. And he mentioned the false negatives, which is the fact that your body has starting to get infected. And COVID is one of the reasons COVID is kind of devilish is because when it infects your it's infecting your lung tissue, it hasn't gotten far enough into your body for the immune system to kick in sometimes, and it makes it one of the things that makes it difficult to muster an immune response quick enough. And that's why even if you're vaccinated, sometimes it can get into you somewhat before your immune system kicks in and starts dealing with it. And so that gives you false negatives. But also, you can get COVID and get over it. And at that point, you have antibodies as well. So, did I just disappear? Yes, I just disappeared. Oh,
It's
there
okay.
I'm back. Yay. Okay. Yeah, you can have false positives as well. You can have, because you've had COVID and you've gotten over it. So you wind up having both positives, false positives and false negatives. Now, the other kinds of tests are all based on a technology called PCR, which is polymerase chain replication. And basically what happens is they take the way your cells replicate themselves is that your DNA basically splits in half into two strands, which are called RNA. And then the RNA basically collects the protein, the amino acids that it needs, and it builds a copy of itself and replicates in that manner. So what they figured out how to do is COVID is an RNA strand by itself. So what they figured out how to do is what they call reverse transcription, where they basically take this RNA strand and use it to build a DNA strand, cDNA, and then they copy that. So they just keep copying it and copying and copying and copying it, and they actually hook a little protein to it that glows. So they make so many copies of it that they put it under a black light, basically, and they can see it glowing. And if there's enough copies of it and it glows, they know, oh yeah, there's. And so what they have to do is identify the protein that they want to copy. And so what kind of the worry is that as the virus mutates, the protein that they've decided to copy winds up not being the correct one. Fortunately, the new variant, the Omicron variant, actually, the one that we copy is actually, it's better, it's easier than the ones that we were copying before. So we can actually identify it more quickly than the ones we were doing before. But in any event, there's a bunch of ways to do it. You do it with extra heat and cold. There's ways that you can do it with stable heat. There's all these different ways that you can copy it, which is the variety of different processes that allow this to take place. And the PCR tests are extremely accurate. You get very few false positives and negatives when you do that. A couple of the questions that people ask is, what's the difference between asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic of any disease? Well, what pre-symptomatic is that the virus is starting to infect you. Just the example that I just gave, the idea that it's gotten into your lung tissues and it's getting into you, but it hasn't gotten into you enough that your immune system has started to kick in. A lot of what happens when you really start getting sick is your body is reacting to the disease. And so the fever that you get is your body heating up to try and kill the virus. When you cough, what's happening is that there's killer T cells inside of your body that are killing cells that have been infected, and those dead cells are what you're coughing up. And so a lot of the symptoms that you get when you're sick are actually your body reacting and fighting the disease. And so pre-symptomatic, the disease has gotten into you, but your body hasn't really started to fight it yet. And so that's what pre-symptomatic is. Asymptomatic is that it's either so mild that your immune system, the amount that it reacts is just not noticeable. And that's asymptomatic. So you wind up without any symptoms. I think that you look at someplace like Hawaii in the United States has been very, very fierce about not allowing anybody to come to Hawaii without tests. Well, first, what they did is they required you to sit in a hotel room for 14 days, just arbitrarily, to make sure you didn't have COVID. And then after the tests came in, they required a PCR test, not the quick test. They required the good, solid PCR tests. And because of that, Hawaii has by far the lowest COVID rate in the country. So it shows that the tests do work, and they can make it possible for there to be a much lower COVID rate, to answer that questions. And I think we've already answered the question about the difference between the two tests. So in any event, those are all things that I want to answer. And I do want to say an interesting thing. There was an article just today or yesterday in New England Journal of Medicine about coronaviruses in general. And coronaviruses get into humans. They're zoonotic diseases, and they come from bats mostly. As far as we know, they all come from bats. And there's been several of them in the last few years. So there was the original SARS, there's MERS, and now there's COVID. And they've all been nasty, nasty diseases. And there's always the possibility that there's one that's going to come along that's even worse. And in fact, the probability that'll happen is extremely high. And right now, analogy is that we're very close to coming up with the universal flu vaccine. And the way that vaccines work is they teach your body to target some part of that virus so that your immune system recognizes a protein that's in that virus that when that virus gets in your body, your immune system is already familiar with it, so it attacks that virus. And so they're right now hunting for a universal coronavirus vaccine. And because of this new mRNA technology, it's very exciting, and we might be able to quite quickly come up with the universal coronavirus vaccine that protects us from that. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Professor Donald. Oh, another things like recently new variant Omicron come. So, like from our speakers, if you share something for our audience, especially many people confused, they do not know what's going on, what will happen, or any scientific informations our speakers can share, it will be helpful for us. Professor Edward, what you want to share about this new variant?
Well, I don't know as much about it because we're all still struggling to figure it out. And I don't want to pretend like I'm a scientist. I mean, I'm sort of a scientist, but not an expert in this in this area. But I think we just have to be watchful of it. One of the issues, by the way, and I was having a discussion last night with a friend of mine who works in another think tank who is a healthcare specialist as well, and we were actually talking about the different variants, and looking at the balance between what sort of preventive measures we take. For example, Donald outlined what Hawaii did, and we could talk about what different countries did for the wave that came in over the last year versus the new ones, and what sort of mix we should have in terms of prevention and treatment. For example, if people are vaccinated and the chances are that if they get it, they're not going to be hospitalized. But we have treatments for it that are coming online that'll make the symptoms certainly not fatal, and maybe not even requiring hospitalization. Then with the new Omicron variation, we have to kind of look at what's the proper balance, because one of the things you've got to take into account is that the virus and the pandemic have not only been devastating in terms of human life. We just passed 800,000, I think, in the United States, but it's been economically devastating. It's been devastating in terms of children and the psychology. I've talked to some psychologists who I've been working with, and there are terrible situations there. So we have to do this balance. So in terms of the Omicron one, I think what we have to do is very honestly and in a non-political way say, what is the proper balance between trying to prevent the spread, assuming that we're going to have to keep economies open to a certain extent, and maybe if people who are vaccinated are going to have very mild symptoms, and we now are getting treatments that are coming online that will mitigate the symptoms, so that it's like getting a normal flu. I mean, thousands and thousands of people get a flu during the flu season normally, even before coronavirus. So we have to ask those kinds of questions. I'm not coming up here with an answer because I don't pretend to know. By the way, I had my 2 normal vaccines. Next Wednesday, I'm getting my booster shot. So I'm doing my part anyway, and hope my colleagues here are doing the same and trying to keep up. And by the way, part of the reason is that I don't have any indication that I would be susceptible to things like blood clots and so forth. I'm going to be doing the Moderna. But the point is, we have to have this intelligent discussion. I don't want to just shut down the economy and destroy it any more than it already is. But we do have to ask the question of, to what extent is isolation the best approach? To what extent is just let people who are vaccinated kind of do their thing and we have treatment so they won't go to the hospital? What's the balance? And I don't know what it is, but I'd like to see that conversation during this next wave that we're seeing coming out with the Omicron variation.
Thank you, Professor. Professor David Smith.
Yeah, the whole area with this, to me, is one that we need to step back and think through more. Rapid testing was a rush product to meet some very explicit needs, and we're seeing some others. One of the products that to me is very interesting right now that's being proposed as a rapid test is one called ID Now. And it is made by Abbott Labs, and actually is being developed not far from me in Central Texas. And it is one that is taking different approaches, using some of the same type of testing modality, but totally different indicators. There's other ones that I think are there. But, one of the questions about the sensitivity and the specificity of the test. And the sensitivity, as I've looked at some of the medical information, and this morning I actually went into the National Institute of Health and looked at some of their internal documents, which I still have access to. And that is one of the new areas of special interest inside there right now, is trying to really understand the sensitivity, not of the actual test, but the sensitivity by the demographics of the people receiving the test. What some of the early results coming back is different races have different sensitivity to how the test is being done. Different parts of the world, you're seeing different sensitivity. One of the interesting comments in one of the papers I was looking at, which is a draft paper not ready for publication yet, is that they looked at New England in the United States the South in the United States and the West Coast, and there's different sensitivity in looking at the results across those three different regions in the United States. And part of it's environmental, part of it is they're actually saying it could be the food we eat, the different elements like that. It can be others. So there's elements in there that we're still trying to come to understand when we look at sensitivity and when we look at some of the accuracy. And I think we're going to see them. That's why I said earlier, if we can really come out with some rapid tests that really go and are more genetically based than what we're doing right now, I think that might be one of the winners. But this is an area where I'm anxiously looking to see, because I would like to start traveling internationally a lot more again. But you know, having to take a test within 24 hours before the flight, and having the ability to say, well, I might not be able to travel, or I might not be able to come back to home where my doctors are, where my support network is, and having to spend 14 days plus, which actually probably translates out to a month in a foreign country where I do not have a support network, where I do not have doctors and things, to me is a challenging reality for me. Because I used to travel internationally all the time, and my trips there are really taken back now just because of those types of issues. So, Sharif, I'm very pro testing on this, but I do have my concerns and some doubts as we move forward with this.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. That's why World Talent Economy Forum, we believe that we have to develop our corporation 100% remote. Even we have some plan like offline conference and academy, but in between our team, definitely all of you are actually our board of advisors. With your permissions, we want to arrange all of our activities 100% online. Previously, we arranged debating competitions, conference, academic activities, but how we see that Omicrons and different variant coming. So for safety purpose, all of our initiative will be online. And how you supporting, everyone supporting World Talent Economy Forum, it's really, really helpful for developing world. Professor Donalds, I'm sure you have some interesting point about Omicron.
I just got an email today that Stanford is going back online, online classes. They're not going to, at least for a little while, when they come back from Christmas break, they're not going to be on campus. But I think that both David and Edward kind of emphasized a point indirectly, which is that we really don't know a lot of things. One of the things that I see a lot, and anyone can do this. I actually subscribe to Science and the New England Journal of Medicine, but I also you can get the bulletins from Nature if you want to, and Lancet and JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and you can read the abstracts. It's a little bit more of a pain to actually read the articles themselves, but they're all available. And so I kind of follow what's going on with COVID, and basically we don't know. And one of the things that I keep coming across that's really interesting is that COVID causes blood clots. Johnson & Johnson may cause blood clots, or Moderna may cause blood clots, but COVID does cause blood clots. And one of the consequences of COVID that's hidden, we don't even know how many people it's happened to, are mini strokes and damage to the heart and to the kidneys and other organs. And in fact, my wife at her medical clinic, they athletes, high school athletes who've had COVID now have to be checked to make sure their hearts are okay so that they can play high school sports. Because even if they had no symptoms, their hearts can be so badly damaged by having asymptomatic COVID that they can't play anymore. And I really enjoy TikTok, and I've just seen person after person after person who has had COVID who are just wrecked. I mean, that's it. Their lives are over. They can't think anymore. They can't walk across a room. And so we look at deaths from COVID as the metric, but COVID is absolutely wreaking havoc in ways we probably won't even begin to even know for years. So that's a really important thing to remember about it. And now when we come across this new variant, well, rumor has it, and mind you, this is rumor. We have nothing but anecdotal evidence. So basing any sort of policy on anecdotal evidence is really a bad idea, that it's milder. But the reason we think it's milder is because it's appeared to be milder in South Africa. But in South Africa, the median age is far, far, far lower than it is in the United States. And COVID has always been milder in younger populations. So the fact that it's milder in South Africa is confounded by the fact that it's a younger population. So we don't actually have any idea what it's going to be like when it starts hitting older populations in Europe and the United States and places like that. And so the reason I'm saying that is because that speaks to the difficulty of actually planning what we're going to do when we to make the kind of decisions that Edward's talking about, which I agree is, it's a balancing act that we do have to do. I want to say one other thing about that, which is there's a wonderful book that I can't recommend too highly. It's called The Premonition by Michael Lewis, who is a very, very good writer who, he's a journalist and not a scientist, but he's also super smart. And so he can understand what the scientists are saying and translate it into something we can all read. And he showed how they developed the models that we use for COVID. And when they developed the models, one of the things that they found out was closing the schools just dropped the level of transmission so dramatically. Of every variable that they changed, that was the one that dropped things most dramatically. And for anybody who has kids, you tell them that and they go, oh yeah, I always get flu from my children, because kids just play in the thing and they have absolutely no boundaries and they give each other everything. And then you bring it home to the parents and then the parents go to work and they give it. And so kids are the vector of flu. And so, obviously it's very likely they're the vector of COVID too. But now the ability to vaccinate them is going down, 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 down. And even if the vaccinations aren't perfect, they're 70%, let's just say like that. What's important is what's called R naught, which is the how many people one person infects. And if one person infects fewer than one person, then the disease dies out. And so if one person infects two people, then the disease is going to spread exponentially. But if one person infects 0.7 people, the disease is going to die out. So the point of the matter is if we can get everybody vaccinated, the disease will die out, even if the vaccination's not perfect, even if the disease is only partially perfect. So that's what I want to say. And then testing and masks also works in that way too, because even if masks are not perfect, if they can cut the R number, the R naught number down below 1, then it cuts down the disease. And when you're looking at mitigation factors, yay, I got my booster the first day I could. And then when you're looking at mitigation, sometimes I put on my mask in a store and forget it's even on. I'll be walking down the street with my mask. I mean, wearing a mask isn't that big of a deal. I mean, when you talk about political, people made it into this, hi, I'm a big Trump fan, so I'm not going to wear a mask. I mean, that's silly. I mean, we wear seat belts. We do all kinds of things like that. I think that children wearing masks at school the world isn't going to come to an end. And that's so incredibly effective that I think there's things that we could do if we just all got vaccinated and wore masks, it'd go away. So that's that.
Excellent. This is really, really excellent discussion, especially how all of you actually create awareness. This is very, very important. And that is actually our objective, World Talent Economy Forum. I'm day by day, I'm also become very, very good fan of all of our speakers. Even regularly, I have to discuss with and I have to work with many university and corporations. Like how you contributing with different knowledge with different things, this is important. And especially I request our audience, those who young, please try to learn from our speakers how they bring different point with different specific informations. The politicians, those who are observing our show, I request everyone, please try to be more positive like our speaker. That is the beauty of, I want to say, USA, that they have many intellectual peoples, and the intellectual people has their knowledge and their views, and they are contributing a lot for the global development. And I believe the developing worlds can learn more. They have to engage with the developed worlds. They have to understand the culture. They have to understand their voice and philosophy. That is very important. Yes, rapid virus testing. For them, maybe they are not from healthcare background, or they are not healthcare researcher, but that is important. They read a lot. They do a lot of research. I'm sure, even when many times how I discuss, I find every of a speaker, Professor Edward, Professor David Smith, Professor Donald, all of them actually read a lot. They have a lot of knowledge. And some point, I feel also that I give them very different topic, and everywhere they contribute. That is important, because the youth communities, especially when we share our content with the university, I request all of the university, please produce some resources like that, because their experience is priceless. How they gain their knowledge, this is very important. And that is my dream. My dream, I want to prepare a new generations like these people. And how the, like, this is all about good example. The more people know about this good example, we only know about the Hollywood movie, we only know about the nightclub, this, that. No, the first world has many beautiful things, especially many good scholar like that. So I also develop myself. When I first go to Oxford University, I learn a lot. So I visit many university. I visit many countries. First, I go to university. So I find that every country has different story. So that is objective World Talent Economy Forum. We want to create a knowledge-based platform and knowledge-based communities. And I'm very happy already. Young people from Malaysia, from Africa, from India, from Bangladesh, from Pakistan, they are joining in World Talent Economy Forum. They also join in the School of Talent Economy. We creating, with our limited opportunity, we creating job opportunity, we creating this kind of platform. So I request all of our policymakers, governments, corporations, please create some developed positive things, because these are the positive things can change our youth communities. So that is the way, and we need good mentors. So Professor Donald, Professor David Smith, Professor Edward, all of them actually very good example for developing world. We have a dream. We want to develop a university. Already we are working, especially with Bangladesh, some of the largest corporations. We want to see you, everyone in the classroom. We want to see all of our professor, if they go and take the classes, and all of the students from government, from corporation, they join in your classes. I believe that will be more productive for national developments. So I believe the more we can contribute in education, we can develop our nations, and we can reduce corruptions, we can reduce unsystematic approach. We are doing hard work, but many positive things we are getting. Many people, many organizations, they believe we are the right places, and that is the achievement of World Talent Economy Forum. And this is teamwork. This is not my individual achievement. This is Professor Donald, Professor David Smith, and Professor Edward achievements, all of our speaker achievements. Next week we have a debate. Why we arranging debate? Because we want to give something different from our speakers. And I saw many people from our social media and from media, electronic media. They are very happy. They are waiting for the debating, so this show debate. So this is another things. Maybe our politicians, our corporate can learn how to go for positive dialogue and argument. So this is another thing. So definitely it will be very interesting. So I request all of our audience, please join in our session. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible. One thing, we have very small amount of audience. Why? I think with electronic like LinkedIn, so Facebook, and Twitter, we have altogether 19,500 audience. The reason is that from the day one, we are very concerned that who will be our audience. We do not go for much people, but I'm sure our audience, someone chairman from Stock Exchange Commission, someone running ministry, someone running some largest corporation, someone vice chancellor, someone government important person. So this 19,500 people, all of them are from very important positions. So on the other hand, we ensure the high quality speaker like today's sessions. So I request, yes, our audience is small, our initiative is small, but our dream is big. And I believe with this quality people and quality audience, we can change whole nations. And I'm very happy today, even one of the largest group corporation, they arrange a meeting with World Talent Economy Forum. They want to give us campus. They want to give us 1,000 students. They want to give us all kind of support for our university. And that is the achievement of our board of advisors, because you always support World Talent Economy Forum. I know every day morning you come, you join, and you discuss, and that is the thing. So we are very happy. I don't know, we will start online initiative as much as possible. Our objective online initiative we want to take, but when everything open, definitely we want to see you in an offline conference, and we want to arrange at least an exclusive academy, and hopefully we can bring thousands of students in our academy, and they will learn directly from our honorable speakers. So thank you for today's session. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. First, I request Professor Edward.
Thank you, and yeah, I want to certainly endorse for your listening audience what you have said. This has been a wonderful series that you've set up, and it's like a plant that you've planted. It's growing, and it really is going to be helping not only the people of Malaysia but the entire Asian Pacific area. So I want to endorse exactly what Sharif has said and urge everybody to engage and participate. I'll just make a few final remarks here. What's interesting about this discussion, sometimes I've had some differences with my colleagues here, but we all seem to be in agreement here on the importance of thinking clearly, of analyzing the facts, of not just saying, well, it's all this or that, or we have to just do this or just do this in terms of the pandemic and how to deal with it. It takes thought. It takes analysis. Donald, you did a great job of looking at all of the particulars of the different viruses, what's coming on, and so forth and so on. And that to me is terribly important, that we make our decisions in an intelligent way, that we balance off the different things. David, you talked about the different kinds of tests and what's going to be developing in the future. Because right now, when we talk about the rapid test, we're kind of talking about one thing. I can go to my local pharmacy and get the rapid test, or I can get the one that takes 1 to 3 days. But we're just like a free market diversifies products and services. Well, we're seeing a diversification of tests. We're seeing a diversification of, where to apply them. a diversification of what's the best way to treat children versus adults and so forth. And so this is the kind of thought process those of you listening to this show have to nurture in yourself, this kind of rational approach where you don't just take, let's just look at rapid tests, you put it in this wider context. That's how, as human beings, we're going to progress. And so, again, go out and get your rapid test. Go ahead and get the other tests as well, because it's better. And get your vaccinations, for heaven's sakes.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor David Smith.
Edward said it well there. I mean, there's multiple things in the pipeline. There's multiple options today with over 25 different manufacturers of rapid tests and more coming. We're going to see the marketplace like chat in it. I actually, while we were talking, did a search online of pricing of the same rapid test. And it's real interesting. It runs from $7 to over $600 for the exact same test. So the marketplace is a dynamics that is going to take place in here, particularly as we see rapid tests leave the hospital environment, leave the doctor's office environment, and is being used at home, as it's being used in workplaces, as it's being used broadly across the hospitality and travel industry. So the marketplace is going to become a driver of how it goes. Also, we're seeing geopolitics come into play with different tests being regulated and approved by different nations based not necessarily on the medical efficacy of it, but the political structure that is playing in the different nations around the world. So that's a variable that we need to take into account as we're looking globally at the rapid test. Finally, even though there's over 100 new tests coming out in the pipeline, I think there's opportunities for other approaches to be used too. So I know research labs around the world are actively working on other options, other ways to handle this. I think there's still opportunities. I think there's still regulatory opportunities if we look at acting collaboratively versus acting regionally too, because I would love to see some global standards emerge that make more sense and see how that plays and begin to see the type of rapid collaboration that happened as we looked at the early viruses. I think we're going to need to see the same thing in the testing environment. And I think are going to need to have the same type of approach as we look at the documentation. You know, Edward held up his card for the vaccinations, and Edward, I only saw 2 entries on it, not 3. But we need...
Wednesday, I'm getting my booster.
I already get my booster.
Well, I have not yet.
Okay.
But I think we're going to need to see the same thing with testing environments. I mean, I almost want to see a historical view of your testing that might not necessarily be shared with the government, but a way that if you are diagnosed at some point, you can go back and have I'm going to call them medical records, even though they're not truly medical records if you're self-administering or if you're being administered at work or things, but that you have the trend lines of your test. And particularly if it is a more detailed test where there's indicators and things, as opposed to pass or fail. And so I think we have a lot of opportunities going, and we just need to realize that this is going to be around for quite a while. So Sharif, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. Professor Donald, what's your concluding remarks for today?
I want to mention one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, which is that there's 2 drugs that are coming out right now. One of them is from Merck and the other one is from Pfizer. And the Merck one doesn't work very well, but the Pfizer one works very, very well to keep you out of the hospital. But you have to take it within 3 to 5 days of getting getting COVID. How are you going to know if you have COVID in 3 to 5 days? Rapid tests. So the rapid test. So it makes sense that if you can afford it, everybody should keep a rapid test of some sort around their house, and every time they get a cold, they should check and try and figure out whether it's a cold, because right now what they're telling us is that the first symptom of the Omicron COVID is a scratchy throat. So it seems to present almost like a cold. So anyway, that's something that I want to say. And then I just want to cycle back to what I was saying before and remind people that we think about ourselves and we ask ourselves the question, well, how much good is the vaccine going to do me? I mean, how much good is, I hear that I might have a breakthrough case. What's the point of getting a booster? Gosh, it's inconvenient for me to wear a mask. Gosh, it's inconvenient of me to stay home if I feel like I have a cold. I mean, it's inconvenient for me to go to the drugstore and get a test, or go to the local testing facility and get a test if I think I might have COVID. But the COVID is something that it's in all of us. It's in the human race, and you could accidentally kill somebody by not, or make somebody a complete lifelong cripple. The more people we have in our society that can never work again, the worse off we all are, because we have to take care of those people. So everything that you're doing is affecting you. It is affecting you, whether you know it or not. You could be one of those people who gets asymptomatic COVID and goes around and gives it to other people. It doesn't, in a sense, it doesn't affect you at all, but don't kid yourself. It is affecting you. And the only way that we can make it go away is to realize it's part of all of us. It's not just part of you. And remember what I said about that R naught number. If you infect fewer than one person, the fewer people you infect, it makes it go away. It can't live if it's not if it can't jump from person to person. And if you get vaccinated, it can't affect and wear masks and socially distance and do the things that we know work. It can't live. And so do your part, kill it. And that's more important than testing or anything. Just go for it. Thank you very much for doing it.
Thank you, everyone. This is really great session. I want to give thanks to everyone, especially audience. Please share our content as much as possible. And thank you, Professor Edward, Professor David Smith, and Professor Donald for your continuous support for World Talent Economy Forum. And I can assure you, from Asia Pacific, World Talent Economy Forum, our think tank, it will be one of the influential think tank who actually provide a lot of positive solution for the society. And all of your contribution will be part of the history. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. Bye-bye and take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Always nice to see you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Apiutade.